We're about to start Chav Daled, but we're finishing up here on the bottom of Chav Gimel Amid Beis. And what we got up to is Lazeh Shnayim v'Lazeh Shnayim. That's about 4 lines up from the bottom of Chav Gimel Amid Beis. So let's just go over the Mishnah, or that part of the Mishnah that we're going to learn the Gemara on that part of the Mishnah. And we're talking about a case where there were two Makadshim, and they were Makadesh. They're not related to each other, but they were Makadesh 2 sisters. Now, each one of these Makadshim, who unfortunately is going to die without children, leaves 2 brothers. And the din is that one brother of the 2 brothers of one Makadesh is going to give Chalitza, and one brother of the second Makadesh is going to give Chalitza. So both these sisters have received Chalitza from one of the potential Miyabmin, or Yevamim, we could call it. And in such a case, the other 2 brothers, each could be Mekadesh, and it might even be Yibum, the sister that was not given Chalitza by his brother, right? So, again, without giving names, because sometimes I find the names a little bit more confusing, but I think on an abstract level, we can understand the Mishnah even better than without names. So you have the 2 brothers of X and the 2 brothers of Y. X and Y both died. One brother of X will give Yibum, will give Chalitza, to one of the 2 sisters. And then ultimately he will marry the other sister. Not, did I say he will marry? What I meant to say is his other brother will marry the other sister, and vice versa. Is that clear? Okay. So the Gemara asks the following question, Hasu Lamali, which is another way of saying Pshita, we know it, and we could derive these conclusions from the previous case in the Mishnah. That's called Hainu Hach. Why was it necessary to teach me this? In other words, it's just a matter of calculating what we call a mimanavshach, meaning since each one of the 2 sisters got chalitza, there's no issue of Yavam Lashuk. That's absolutely for sure. And since each one of the other brothers is now stepping in after chalitza, because they got chalitza from both sets, meaning they got chalitza from one member, one surviving brother of each of the 2 groups. So they definitely are no longer Yavam Lashuk. And not only that, we pointed out that the Mishnah earlier had already established that the chalitza removes the zika. And once the chalitza removes the zika, there's no issue of achos sekukasa. So in Manavshach, everything works out lakula. We can be lenient here. We don't have an issue of Yavam Lashuk because each one received chalitza. That's number one. And number 2, we don't have an issue of achos chalutzaso because with the chalitza, there's a hafka of the zika. So the Gemara says, Ma'u b'tema ligzar dilma miyabim below chalitza. What does this mean? We should perhaps be afraid, this Tahavavina, that since at the end of the day we're telling a brother from each one of the sets that he could be miyabim her, then clearly the ruling is that there's a heter yibum. They may go ahead and be miyabim her before the chalitza. In other words, out of sequence. Ligzar dilma miyabim below chalitza. The yishkechu in other words, let's say you have the one ach of each set, of each brother, who's going to be miyabim, they're going to forget about the fact that first and foremost, she needs chalitza. She, meaning the one that each one is going to be miyabim respectively, needs chalitza first. And biofen shel shnayim v'shnayim b'sofu shalom misyabmo shnei. Since at the end of the day, we're going to allow both of these sisters to be included under yibum, alulim litos, there may be room for error. Lomar shebi achar ushten misyabmos ein kvar tzorach b'chalitza. Once they hear that there's going to be a yibum here, in their mind, chalitza is irrelevant. It's not something that would apply in a case where there's yibum. Now, the Masifta wants to know why wouldn't there be such a havamina in the Reisha, in the earlier part of the Mishnah? He says, Mashenki b'Reisha, kasher yesh lazeh echad v'lazeh shnaim. So that was the case where one of the brothers who died left one single brother, the other brother who died left two brothers. We're only going to allow one of these two sisters to be misyabemes, and the other one gets chalitza. And therefore, since they realize that only one of these two sisters is able to get chalitza, so they realize that chalitza is relevant and necessary, they will therefore postpone the yibum of the other brother, meaning the second brother of the second brother, because one brother has two brothers. And they'll realize that the sequence is critical and the chalitza has to come first. Mashenkin, in a case where both sisters fall for yibum, there will be yibum for both sisters, then in their mental state, there's no chalitza on the radar screen. Okay. Now, at this point, the Gemara is going to analyze the case of a Makadesh who married one of two sisters. We're not sure which of the two sisters. And he left two brothers who survived him. And in that case, we said that one of the two brothers gives her chalitza and the other is miyabim. Then we went out and Mishnah pointed out that if, let's say, both brothers, instead of one doing chalitza and the other yibum, they both implemented yibum, one with Leah and the other with Rachel, then ein motziin miyad. We're not going to bust up the marriage. Because at the end of the day, once each yibum was implemented, then the zika was removed, right? The yibum is mafkia zika, and there's no achos kukasa. So the Gemara asks, don't we have a contradiction from a Mishnah later on Daf Chavav? Mishnah, how's it different? Mehadis nan arba achiv shnayim mehem nisuin shtei achios. So two brothers married two sisters, and there are two more brothers that survived them. Umesu hanisuim es achios. So what happens now when these two sisters fall for yibum in front of two brothers, the two surviving brothers? There were four brothers all told. Each one married one of the two sisters, and each one died, leaving two brothers behind. And the Mishnah Paskins on Daf Chavav, Harelu Cholzos below Misyabos. There is no yibum at all. Okay, now here we have to introduce a principle of Beit Shammai. I'm sorry, Beit Hillel. Now both sisters are what we call skukos liyibum. They both need yibum, and each one of the surviving brothers is a yavam. So therefore, each one of these two sisters is prohibited to each one of these two brothers because Vachos Kukasa. Are you with me? Because again, there are two sisters, and they both fall for Yibum to these two brothers. Each sister now is Achos Kukasa. And Basil says that in this case, even if they went ahead and implemented Yibum, both brothers with these two sisters, then Yetzu. Yetzu means we have to bust up the marriage. We have to force them. Yotziu means force them to give a divorce. So the Gemara is asking, in our Mishnah, we have a halacha that kad muva kansu ein motziim biyodo. But Beis Hill, in the case of two achim who married shtei achos and left behind them two surviving brothers, im kansu yotziu. How do we reconcile that in our Mishnah it says im kansu ein motziim biyodo? And in the Mishnah later on Daf Chavav, it says that even b'di'eved, if they went ahead and they pushed the envelope and they both married these two sisters, the halacha is yotzir. So the Gemara answers, Hachi Hashta. Hachi Hashta means there's an obvious distinction between the cases. Here we turn to Daf Chavav Dalet. Awesome. There in the Mishnah Chavav, in the case of two brothers married two sisters, leaving behind them two brothers. Ilaman di Omer yesh zika, the Ilaman di Omer asal avakel Masechet Yevamot. So now the Gemara is going to explain why there's a real serious Isur here if both brothers went ahead and were miyabed, the two sisters respectively, and we're going to work it out according to each possibility, whether it's the possibility of, there's the two explanations for that din in the Mishnah and the principle of Beis Hill that says Yotziu. One is going to be Yesh Zika, and the other is going to be Asal Avatal Mitzvah Yibum. And neither of those two reasons will apply in our Mishnah here on Daf Chav Gimel. So let's go through the two reasons. According to the reason number one, explanation number one, we consider Zika as a kind of ishus. Correct? So when a woman falls for Yibum, it's almost as if, to some extent, she has a partial ishus relationship with the Yavam. So in the Mishnah, on Daf Chavav, where we say Choltzos v'lo misyabmos, they cannot be Yibum. That's because there's a Zika of each one of these two sisters making her an Ashes Yavam. And now we have a problem of Achos Ishto. Do you follow this? When these two sisters fall for Yibum, the two brothers, and therefore there's a Zika relationship between each one of these sisters and each one of the brothers. If we view Yesh Zika as an Ishus relationship, the man is now Ke'ilu married to two sisters. And the fact that they went ahead and implemented the marriage is not a mitigating circumstance. And therefore, that was Beis Hill's principle. Why? Because Yesh Zika. So we're going according to the Man the Omer who holds Yesh Zika. And therefore, again, now we have to ask ourselves, what do you mean? He went and he married her. Doesn't that remove the Zika? So why is the other sister Achos Ishto, meaning a quasi-Achos Ishto through Zika? The Zika is no longer. He says, Gamli Achos Shekonsu Shnei Achos Achos Adayin Hein BeIser Tachtam. Mishum she'af shekvar poka zikasa mikomakom kevon shebe'es nefilasan hayu asuros liyibum sha achas farnesru olamis ke'eshes ach sheyesh lo banin. Meaning, once you have an erev of Ashes of Achos Ishto, that erev remains, right, as long as his wife is alive, because it was already set in stone at the moment of Nefila Fiyibum. Now, I think what he has in mind is when the second brother died. Right? Let's say Reuven died at time T1 and Shimon died at time T2. When Shimon dies, then the second sister, we'll call her Rachel, in addition to Leah, both now are Zakukos to the two surviving brothers. We'll call them Levi and Yehuda. At that moment, each one of the two sisters is considered Achos Ishto. Once that Erev is Chal, we can't remove the Erev. Again, if you're talking about a regular case, just one second, what was I about to say? About a case. Afshikvar Okazi, I'm giving you the ace Nefilos, you Asuros. And how is that different than our case? Just one second, if you don't mind. In our case, and we had two sisters. Right, in our case, they weren't brothers, am I right? Were they brothers? Even if they weren't, can I help you actually? Because since they're two sisters, let's get it again. I'm just going back to the Mishnah here on Chav Gimel and base for a moment, just to review it. Shnayim. Waits. The ain bezim otzim v'yado. That's the case of Kodmu v'Konsu. Shushikol echad mehen yoch lomar ha'isha shehu panasti hi eishes achi v'Reb min adin. So again, I'm not sure if we have to work this out in all cases. See, the other case was Zeh echad v'zeh shnayim. One of them is miyab, is cholitz shtehen. Fine. And then, as far as the other set is concerned, one of them will be cholitz. Oh, he gave cholitz both of them. Shnayim. So he has two brothers. Echad cholitz v'echad miyab. Chadmu v'kansu, ein motzino sam miyado. Yeah. Right. In all those cases, I think, again, Beiravon Mugval, but I think in all those cases, he has a right to say that this is Yibum. Okay, now let's see if that.
In all those cases, it's only Zika with one of those systems. Here we have Zika. The other one, we don't know which one, but it's only with.
Okay. Yeah, that's better than what I want to say. I was going to say that in those cases, he has a right to say that this is my mitzvah yibum. This is Eishes Ach. Here, let's say this Mishnah of Shnayim Musu Shtei Arbat, Shnayim Musu Shtei Achlo. Now, yeah, but here also, right. So from the get-go, there was already an Iser Vachos Isht. Right. So what argument could he come up with? There he could come up with an argument. I'm just being miyabe my Yevamot. Okay, now let's hold now that Ein Zika. What does that mean, Ein Zika? Ein Zika means that Zika is not enough to generate an Erev of Achos Isha. So then we have to understand we have to offer a substitute explanation for the Isur, and that's called Osel Levatel Mitzvahs Yevamot. We can't cause a bittul of the mitzvah of Yibum. And therefore, if both brothers would be miyabim, both of these sisters, so therefore, that would be a bittul mitzvah yibum. Why? Because perhaps Shema achar sheyibem ha'echad yamus hashem. Like, so one of them will be miyabem, one of these two sisters, and the other brother will die. And then what happens? There's another sister, and no one can be choletz or miyabem. Why? Because as far as the second sister is as far as the second brother is concerned, she becomes achos ishto through the yibur. So let's just see, how do we avoid this? If we start with chalitza, right? That's called choltzim v'lo misyab. Oh, I see. So in other words, chalitza itself is not considered a bittul mitzvahs yibum. But if you would go with yibum, then the very moment that the first brother would be miyabim, then you would be mevatel a mitzvah yibum vis-a-vis the second sister, and also mevatel mitzvahs yibum. So we would rather have a situation where both sisters would receive chalitza than a situation where one would get chalitza and the other one couldn't get either chalitza or yibum. So again, he had no right, this brother, to go ahead and be miyabim her. But once having done so, the other sister can no longer fall for yibum or chalitza. Why is that? Just 1 second. I understand why there's no yibum, because v'achos ishto. Why wouldn't there be chalitza? So again, Let's go over it one more time. It says the following: L'chein ein omrim sheyibmu shnei ha'achim kol echad achos acheres, mishum sheyesh lachush shem li'achar sheyibem ha'echad yomus ha'achas sheni v'tispatel mitzvos yibum because of achos ish. If what? If each one gives chalitza, that's not called a bittul mitzvos yibum. Okay, fine. Now all this is meant to lead up to a contrast to our Mishnah and prove that in our Mishnah the sibas ha'isa doesn't apply. Why is that? Let's go back again to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah has a case where a man was mekadesh one of two sisters, we don't know which one, and he has two brothers. Be'emes ein kan ela achas zekuka liyibum. Only one of them really falls for yibum. I think that's what you mentioned before, Steve, right? Only one of them falls for yibum. We don't know which one. But akshestein omdos besofei ezo hi kuka ve'eze hi asura mishum achos zekukasa. L'chein achar shekadmu v'konsu shnei ha'achim u'poka zika me'achios shuv kar enam omdos be'isur tachas ba'aleim shekein ein li oso mitam sha'omdu sha'achas be'isur keven shelo hoya zeh isur elamach masofeh וכיוון שעתה אין הן עומדות באיצו תחת עליהם, גם ביש שקודמו וקונסו, לא עברו אל על סופק, יסו וכל אחד ואחד אמור דידי כמסרמי לב. Maybe as luck would have it, in this matching, the woman that I chose to be Miyamin is actually my Eshazah. Meaning that's the one that my late brother married. Okay. Now we get to the case of two people, they're not brothers, and they're Makadish two sisters. But we don't know which one was Makadish which sister. Now each one of these two Makadshim leaves behind him two brothers. We have two groups. We have two brothers left to Ruvain, and let's say two brothers left to Yehuda. Cholzu achiv shel echad eshtehen. So wait a minute. One brother was cholex both of them. Lo yibmu achiv shel hasheni yeshtehen el echad cholex the echad miyad. Shema Yibem Harishon es zu she'ena eshes ach v'nimtza pogea v'achos kukasa v'kanu v'kanso ein motzi. So one brother right, one surviving brother will what? will give chalitza, give echad shtein. Second. Again, there's so many cases here. So each one of these two brothers, Makadesh, one of two sisters, leaves two brothers, and he says here, Cholzu Ochiv Shel Echad Eshtehen. Why is that? One of them is cholates both of them. Lo yibmu echov shel. Because we're not going to allow a surviving brother of the other brother the option of choosing one of the two for yibum. Rather, first one of the brothers has to give chalitza, and then there'll be yibum by the other brother. Shebeyavo Arishon. Yibam, if we would allow Yibam Arishon, I think when he says Yibam Arishon, I mean the first of the second group, if I understand correctly. Shema Yibam Harishon, if he would be the first one to be Miyabam, maybe he would be Miyabam that woman that's not Ashes of, and she would be there for Achos Kukas. Avakansu ein motziviyah. Tani Shila. Vafilu Shneim Kohen. So both of these brothers are Kohanim. And I think he's referring to the surviving brothers. And he's not allowed to marry a chalutza. Second, one brother from the first gave chalitza to both of them, and they're both sisters have the status of chalitza. And now when we get to the second brother, so now no, wait, the original Makachim were not brothers. So one of the two Makachim is a Kohen. He leaves two brothers. Now, once the brother of the first Makadesh gave chalitza to both of them, then l'chora, both of these women should be prohibited to the brothers of the second Makadesh, who was, as it turns out, a Kohen, and therefore they are Kohen, and they can't marry a chalutza. So how could it be that one will give chalitza and the other one will be miyabim? She already got chalitza from the first brother. I mean, the surviving brother of the first brother. And here also we're going to say, ein motzi miyadam. Yachal pi she'echad mehem vadai nosa chalutza. If you can allow one of the two to marry one of the two sisters, she already is a vadai chalutza. Shalosh shnei achim shalom kadesh acher cholzu l'shtein. V'im came vadai she'achas mehem yesh ladin chalutza. We don't know which of the two sisters, but one of the two sisters definitely had a chalutza. So the Gemara asks my timer, why in this case do you say that even though the Kohen is now going to be miyabim a chalutza, she's definitely a chalutza, ein motzi miyada. The Gemara answers chalutza d'Rabbanan he v'safek chalutza lo gazu bu Rabbanan. Again, the premise here is that chalitza generates an Isur Kahuna D'Rabbanan. It's not Dorais. Dorais only applies to get. But again, why is this a Safek Chalutza? He says, V'mikra zeh ein al kol echad me'achim el Safek shema ha'isha shenasa hi eishes hamakadish ha'acher v'chalutza hi. Right, so when the surviving brother of, let's call him Ach number one, gives chalit to these two women, we don't know that either of those two chalits are meaningful because it's very possible that it's the other brother who was Makadish. One second. Finished. And each one of them was Makadish. It's possible that one of them, that the other brother, there are two Makadshim. Because maybe, on that woman that he's going to be Miyabim, she's a Safek Chalutza. You follow? So in other words, both of these sisters are going to get chalitza because of the suffix. But as far as each woman is concerned, there's still a suffix. Again, just want to get the cheshbon again. So we have here two men marrying two sisters. We don't know which was married to which sister. Why does that create a suffix? So let me read it again. He says, suffix shema ha'isha shenasa hi eshes hamakadesh ha'acher chalutza.
So one of the two men is the Kohen.
Right.
The other one's not.
The other
The one who's not is just the one brother.
Oh.
One who's the Kohen has the two brothers. So when the one brother gives chalitza to both women, he's giving it one to.
In my Gemara, it says, "L'kol echad mehem yesh shnei achim." I mean, again, I don't know if this is relevant to your point. I'm very eager to hear what you have to say to try to clarify this, but I just want to say here, he says, "Shanidu b'Mishnah." Shnayim shekidushu shtei achyos, ein yadua eze mehem kiddush kol echad, kol echad mehem shnei achim. Cholzu echad shel echad eshteihem. So why is that a safek chalutza? Again, one of the brothers gave chalitza to both of them. Okay, that I understand is a safek chalutza. But now when we get to this,
he's the non-Kohen.
Right. But now we get to the second set of brothers. And once again, one of those brothers is going to have to give chalitza.
No, I thought
No?
they're marrying each woman, the sisters now.
Oh, both brothers?
Both brothers they're both married. One is the Rama and one is.
He writes, again, I'm just going to read this and see. Cholzu We may have to go to the names in the diagrams. I'm just trying to avoid that. Cholzu echav shel echad eshtehen lo yiyabu echav shel hasheni eshtehen. Ela echad choletz ve'echad miyaben. So now we're up to the Echav Shel Sheni, which is a Kohen, right? And one of these two surviving brothers will be Choletz, the other will be Miyaben. So again, I'm just trying to calculate, why is that a Safek Chalitza? Safek Chalutza, he's saying if Chalutza to a Kohen is D'Rabbanan, now we could apply the principle of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula. But I'm just trying to figure out, he says, but Mikra is there, Ein al kol Echad Me'acham El Safek, Shema Ha'isha Shenasa, and he pushed the envelope and he married her. Shema Hi Eshes HaMakadesh HaAcher V'Chalutza. I don't get it. His brother gave Chalitza. She's definitely a Chalutza. She's not definitely a Chalutza because what? Because maybe this particular girl was not married to his brother, so that's not a chalutza. But if she wasn't married to this brother, then she was married to the other brother, and she got chalitza from the surviving brother of that brother. I don't understand. She's a chalitza.
Well, if the one who got chalitza twice, the one who got chalitza twice was the non-Kohen's wife.
We don't know who's married to whom, but yeah.
Right. So then
on the side,
other
you're saying
one,
on
you
the
only
side.
got one chalitza, that was a meaningless chalitza. But if she was,
When you say it was a meaningless chalitza, why not?
well,
She may have been the widow of his brother.
Right.
So why is that a meaningless chalitza?
because the non-Kohen brothers, when they gave her chalitza, there wasn't this either. So one woman got chalitza twice, one woman got.
Okay, that I agree with you.
Right. So if the one who only got it once was actually the Kohen's wife, now he's his Yevamot. If she was the non-Kohen's wife, now he's marrying a chalitza. So he doesn't know, is it really his Yevamot or is he marrying a? That's where the suffix. She could be a chalitza, or maybe she's not.
No, even though physically she received the chalitza, but that chalitza is a suffix. Why? Because we don't know when the surviving brother of the non-Kohen, we called him, right? Brother number one, whether or not that was in fact his Yevamot. And then she's not going to get chalitza from the second brother Cohen because he wants to be the Yavim her. His other brother, his other brother gave chalitza to one of the two sisters, and now he's being the Yavim the other one. So it all boils down to the suffix whether she was Kuka to the first brother, the non-Kohen brother. So it remains a suffix chalitza. Get that one more time. That's brilliant. The second set, one brother is going to give a chalitza. He's going to give chalitza to Leah. Now the second brother Cohen is going to marry Rachel. And so when he marries Rachel, her status as a chalutza could only be a result of one of the two brothers of the non-Kohen, the first Makadi, giving her chalitza, but that chalitza was awful. Okay, finally, got it. Takes a while. Did you major in math?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay. No, it really takes a mathematical mind. I'm telling you. It's like this minhag that every bar mitzvah lanes. Like I'm so opposed to that minhag because either you have it or you don't have it. If you don't have it, it's not an acquire. Maybe there's certain tastes in wine or so that you could acquire. I don't even agree with that. But anyway, but when it comes to laning, either you have it or you don't have it. Amongst my sons, there's one of my sons just doesn't have it. I don't have it. If I have to lane, I need 15 days to prepare for 3 psukim to remember the trouble. So the Gemara asks for chalutza d'Rabbanan. He, for Tanya, and again, this is going to be an asmachta. I can even guess this Gemara without looking at it. Right, but Tanya, we have a brisa that says grusha. Right, the pasuk says ve'isha grusha ve'isha lo yikachu. Ein li'ela grusha chalutza minayin tamalomer ve'isha. In other words, the extra vav is coming to be marbe, something other than a grusha, another category of a woman that is prohibited to a kohen, and that's going to be a chalutza. So we see that it's doraisa. The more answers with Rabbananu ukras makta b'alma. Just curious, on a doraisa level, what does the extra vav indicate? The isha grusha vav. I don't know if anybody's even bothered with that question. Okay. So this leads us to the next mission. Now the question is, you have many brothers. Which one of them should be miyaveh? They're all candidates for you. Mitzvah b'gadol liyaveh. So I guess age before beauty. Im kadam hakadman zachar. So he didn't even confer with his older brothers. He took the law into his own hands. He jumped and he was miyavim her. Then he was zocher the mitzvah. She is now his wife. He shouldn't have done so. But apparently this mitzvah is just a lechatchila mitzvah. But in the Eved, she's zekuka to each one of the brothers. And therefore the Yibum is Chal and the Kinyan is Chal. She's an Eishesish. So now we go back to the parasha of Yibum in Kitetze. So the Gemara, the Brisa now is darshaning. Mitzvah b'gadol liyaveh. This bothers my mind because the pasuk Bachar is talking about the Bachar after Yibum, not which of the brothers should be miyaveh. Yesh kama achim hagadol shebem kodem lekulo. I think in the footnote here, he's touching on my problem. He says, "V'haya b'char asher teled, klomar haben hagadol asher teled imo shel hayavam hu yakom al shem achiv." Okay, what does that have to do with this? Umashe dorshem asher teled island. Again, it says V'haya b'char asher teled. Then it says Yakum al Shem Achiv. Ben Agadol asher teled imo shel Yava. Hu Yakum al Shem Achiv. See, I thought Asher Teled means she will give birth. I thought that she is referring to the Yevamah. You follow me? In other words, when the Yevamah herself, after Yibum, gives birth, her firstborn son should be named after her late husband, her first husband. I can prove to you that the Asher Teled is referring to the Yevamah because we darshan Asher Teled prat la'ilus, and an islandess doesn't fall for Yibum. But our Gemara is interpreting Asher Teled is referring not to the Yevamah, but to the mother of the Yevamah. And the Bechar of the mother of the Yevamah, he is the one who will be Mi'aber. So when it says afterwards in the Pasuk, Al Shem Yakum Al Shem Achiv, it means he will stand up and be making the Shem Achiv. And Mikan Mitzvah Gadol Liyaben. So he writes him, Yesh Kama Achim Agadol Shabem Kodem Lekula. Begam Olav Mutelas HaMitzvah. And listen to this. Im lo yirtzu kulam liyamim. If, let's say, each, there's a unanimous refusal on the part of all the brothers to be miyamim, hadinu shekofenis hagadol liyamim. So this halacha has a plus and a minus. The plus is that it's your mitzvah, the zoch and the mitzvah. The minus is that if you refuse and you're the gadol, then we will compel you to be miyamim. Tele, prat la'ilus she'en yoledus. Again, this is not pshuto shel mikra because the Gemara just argued and established that pshuto shel mikra is that the Asher Teled is not describing the Yevamah, but rather the mother of the deceased, the mother of the Yavam. Yakum al Shem Achiv Linachla. Meaning that the Yavam now, through his Yibum, becomes the inheritor, the heir of the estate of his late brother. So the Gemara says, how do you know this? Actually, the Bryce itself is asking this question. Ata Omer, that V'hoya HaBechar Asher Teled is referring to the Yavam himself. And then Yakum al Shem Achiv is referring to the Nachla. O Eina Ella L'Shem. This is Jeff's article, right? Eina Ella L'Shem, which means that the B'char Asher Teled means that after the Yavam is Mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum, and now he has a firstborn son, he will be called on the name of his late brother. Is Yakum al Shem Achiv, means that if the deceased brother was Yosef, Koren Oso, now his new nephew who's just born to the Yavama with the Yavam is Yosef. He'll also get the same name Yosef. Pretty explicit. Yochanan Koren Oso Yochanan. So once again, how do we know, asks the Brisa, that the mitzvah of Yibum is chal primarily first and foremost on the Yavam, on the Gadol? Perhaps when the Torah says V'hoya Bechar, we're talking about the son of the. And furthermore, how do we know that the Yavam himself inherits the estate of his deceased brother? We could interpret the pasuk as referring to Kriya Shem. We'll give him the name Yosef because his uncle's name was Yosef, but not necessarily that he has rights to inherit the estate. Nemar Khan, Yakum al Shem Achiv, v'nemar lahalon al Shem Achem Yikaru b'nachlasam, Ma Shema Omer lehalon, with regard to Nachla, Av Shema Omer Khan l'Nach. So in other words, this drasha that the Yavam is like steps into the name of his late brother as far as Nachla is concerned, and therefore he inherits his Nachla is derived from Gzeirah Shava. Because it says here, Yakum al Shem Achiv, and it says in Breishis, Nemches al Shem Achem Yikar b'Nachlasam. So we see that this concept of al Shem means Nachla. Now, what's below Yimache Shmo? That the name of the deceased is not, so to speak, terminated. Pratlis Saris, Shmo Mochri. So Lo Yimache Shmo means we're saving his name. He would have had a name, and he had the potential for a name, but if he's a Saris, and he couldn't have a child, he's already, by definition, Shmo Machui, that's it. He doesn't have any generations. He's not Roy Laholid. And therefore, he's not included in Yibum. So a Saris who dies without children, his wife does not fall for Yibum. Omar Rava, Afal Gav to the Cholator Kula, Ein Mikra Yotzim de Pshuto, Hocha Soig Zerishav Hafikte Mipashte Bikro. Once again, I'm going to tell you that I think the Gemara is trying to address my question. I mean, the Pasuk Pshat is that when it says Bechar in the Pasuk, what does it say? Yevahoya Bechar Shatele. The Pshuto Shemikra is it's referring to Asher Tele, the Yevama. I'm sorry, the Yevama after Yibum. But we're interpreting that's referring to the mother, right? The mother of the Yavam. And that's based on this Gzeirah Shava. And also when it says Al Shem Achiv, when it says in the Pasuk Al Shem Achiv, it sounds like it's referring just simply to the name. That the newborn baby after the Yibum should be called by the name of his late uncle. And now we're interpreting it that Yakum al Shem Achiv means that the Yavam himself is now, so to speak, stepping into the shoes of his late brother for purposes of inheriting his estate. And all this, says Rava, of being mafkia, the Pshuto Shel Mikra, is based on Gzeirah Shava. because it says Al Shem Achiv, and then with regard to Nachla, at the end of Sefer Bereshis, it says Al Shem Acheim Yikar B'Nachlos. And now the Gemara raises the following question. The Ilav Gzeir Shava, and if I didn't have the Gzeir Shava from which we derive the halacha that the Yavam inherits his deceased brother, Hava Mina, Shem Mamish. Okay, we'll take the pasuk Kipshuto literally. That when it says Al Shem Yaakov Al Shem Achiv, it means he'll get that same name, and now we're referring to the child of the Yibum. Leman Ko Mazir Achman. To whom is the Torah addressing this requirement of being Koreh, the shame of the newborn baby from the Yibum, on the name of his late uncle? Yavam. If the Torah is talking to the Yavam and saying, give your firstborn son the name of your late brother, then it should have said, Yakum al Shem Achicha, because we're talking in the Lashon Nochach. How do you say Nochach in English? First person, I think, right? Right. If I'm talking to you about yourself, that's called first person. But here it says Achicha. I'm sorry, here it doesn't say Achicha in first person, but it says Achiv. So who are we talking to? Ila Beidina, if the Torah is admonishing Bezdin that they have to guarantee that the newborn baby is called after his uncle, is then it should have said Yakum al Shem Achi Aviv. So therefore, Rava, forget about Gzeira Shava. You must admit that we're talking about Nachla here in this pasuk, because the Pshuta Shel Mikra just simply doesn't work out. So the Gemara answers, Vidilma, if not for the Gzeira Shava, Hachi Kamal Rachman al Bezdin. Imru Leila Yavam, you should instruct the Yavam, and that's Bezdin's responsibility to notify the Yavam that Yakum al Shem Achiv, that he should make sure that the child from this marriage gets the name of his late brother. Ella. So then, if you're going to tell me that we're not going to interpret the pasuk that way, but rather it's referring to Nachla, it must be Dasoi Gzeira Shava Vafikti Ligamri Mipashti Dikra. That's what Rav is pointing out over here, that you need the Gzeira Shava to prove that the pasuk is talking about Nachla. Because the Pashti Dikra, the simple pshat in the pasuk, it's talking about Shem Mamish. So now I know we're in the middle of a sugya here, but we ran out of time. So let's make a note of where we got up to. We're up to Hashda the Amrit Kra. So maybe tomorrow we'll sort of just make a quick review of, this is typical of one of those sugyas where the drashas go back and forth in the various psukim. And then to have a great Hanukkah.